Welcome back to Riley's Collection. I'm Riley, and today we're reviewing the Mezco Moon Knight. So this is a Mezco figure, so of course he's gonna look really good. Mezco does a fantastic job crafting these costumes for their 1/12 scale figures. It's got like what I think is almost maybe like a pleather material making up kind of like the armor plating on his costume, if that's kind of what it is. And then he's got like a nice mesh material underneath, which is a slightly off-white as compared to like the pure white of those little pleather sections, I guess. And then you have the cape, which looks really good, and it doesn't get in the way too much. It drapes really nicely. I am a huge fan of the cape. The cape is really dope. You don't get two capes with this guy, so that's a little bit of a bummer. A wired cape would have been really cool for this guy, but aside from that, I really do like the cape a lot. The hood does a pretty good job blending in with the cape, although the texture doesn't really match up 100%. The hood is just gonna look a little bit different because the textures just come across different on those different materials, but it does still do a pretty solid job of pretty much blending into the cape. The hood is removable, and we will talk about that more in depth later on. I will say though, I'm not too big of a fan of like those shin pieces. I don't know what it is about them. They just look a little bit cheap. I think it's just a lack of paint. Maybe more of like a wash would have been nice in there to bring out some of those details a little bit more. It seems like there is a little bit of a wash in there, but I don't think it was quite enough on those shin pieces. The proportioning looks pretty good. His arms might be a little long, but other than that, he does look pretty good. I think the biggest thing with this is going to be what it is with other Mezcos, where it's like, okay, well, do you like the cloth costume? Do you not? Do you think he looks like he's in pajamas? Because like for me personally, I could go either way. For me, it's more of like a from figure to figure basis. I think some of them definitely do look like they're in pajamas, but then others not so much. I don't think it looks like pajamas. I think it looks really good on this guy. I think it's tailored really nicely to the body. There's no ugly stitch lines that I can see. There might be some on the back, I actually don't know. Yeah, there's like a stitch line down the back, but it's really unobtrusive, and it's gonna be covered by the cape. And then the stitch line on the butt is pretty nicely hidden in there, so that looks pretty good. And in between the legs you get a stitch line, but that's to be expected. You can also kind of see through the material a little bit. Like I can see those joints in there, like you can just see right through that. I don't like how thin that is. I think they should have thickened that up so you can't see those joints. It is a little bit cool that you can see it in there, but it is supposed to look seamless, so I don't like that. Those eyes look so good. I love that bright blue in the eyes, very striking. The face sculpt looks really good. I really like all the deep shading in between the crevices of like the lines of the mask and his furrowed brow and everything. It just looks really good. And then the emblem on the chest looks good. That looks really good, and that's more of like a harder plastic right there. And then he's got his belt, which also has kind of like a little wash on it. But yeah, man, this figure just looks really dope, and I think that he's definitely got to be the dopest looking Moon Knight figure out there, hands down. So I'd like to direct your attention to the accessories. As you can see here, I have all of Moon Knight's accessories laid out on the rotating base. He comes with 4 sets of hands in total. He's got fists on the figure, and then he does come with 2 of like these little moon shuriken holding hand things. I don't know what they're called in the comics, but both of these hands are sculpted differently. So this one has 1 of them in there, this one has 3 of them. They're like Moon Knight batarangs, I guess. I don't know what they're actually supposed to be called, but that's essentially what they are. And then he does come with 2 open hands right here, and then he's got his 2 gripping hands right here as well. And the hands are all painted pretty decently, although I think the paintwork could be a little bit better. It's slightly shoddy in some areas, but definitely passable. He also does come with an unmasked head sculpt, which is also a battle damaged head sculpt, so that looks pretty good. He's got like a black eye and a bunch of cuts on his face. I really like that 5 o'clock shadow he's got on there. Just really nicely painted, and the eyes man, it just looks so real. So yeah, that head sculpt looks really good. And this is the hood when it's down, so you get that too, so that's nice. And then you also do get his like moon boomerang right here. Again, I really don't know what this is supposed to be called, but it is nicely painted and it does look pretty good. And you do get some weapons, including this staff right here, which looks really cool. All of them are really nicely painted. We do get some nunchucks here. I really like the chain on this, and also the other weapon that we're about to look at. And I'm not really sure what to call this one, but it's just like a really long kunai with chain, I guess, but Moon Knight themed. But yeah, that looks really good too. And that one's super long, so that's really cool. That one's probably my favorite weapon. You also do get your Moon Knight stand right here and the arm to put in there if you don't want it to be the peg. And then you do get some wires to pose around the cape because the cape is not wired. So that's cool if you want that, although I think that these are pretty much junk, so I'm not going to be using those. Overall, I do think you get a pretty decent amount of accessories with this guy, and all the accessories are really cool. I really do like all of them. I just think that we could be getting more for what you pay. Now, I don't know what this guy originally was retail price wise, but I paid about $110 for this guy, which I think is right around what the retail price would have been. Correct me if I'm wrong, but for that price, I think we could definitely get more accessories. And now it's time for the articulation segment, and as you can see, I put the unmasked head on so you guys can see it on the figure there as we're doing this. But the head does look up about that far, so not too far, but okay. And then it does move down about that far. There is a joint at the neck and at the head, so you do get a good amount of tilt on this guy. It's a double ball joint setup. At the arm, it does move up about that far, so a little bit more than 90 degrees. You do get a bicep swivel, but I would just be really careful with this guy considering he's got the costume on. Double jointed elbows that move about that far in, so not too bad, but it does get a little bit hindered by this gauntlet right here. The wrist goes back and forth and it does swivel all the way around, so that's fine. He does have a diaphragm joint which moves back about that far, and then it moves forward about that far, so you're really not getting that much range out of the torso. He does have a swivel at the waist, but it's pretty useless considering you've already got a swivel at the diaphragm, and you're not really going to get much out of that swivel because it's heavily hindered by the costume. You can get the leg to move up about that far, which is almost 90 degrees, but not quite. Double jointed knee moves in about that far, which is farther than I thought it would go, to be honest. No boot swivel, and then the foot does move forward about that much, so really not that much at all, and it really doesn't move up at all. And then you do get your ankle rocker a little bit, but you really don't get much range out of it. So the articulation on this guy is okay, I guess, but you're really not going to be able to get too much out of him. He is going to be super hindered, and I would advise being very careful with this guy as he is in a giant onesie that is made of fabric that can break, that can get pinched, that can get creased, so just be really careful. You are going to be able to get some good poses out of him, right? But it's just going to be a lot more difficult to pose him as dynamically as you might want to. And for some scale comparisons here, we have two other Mezco figures, being Mezco Spider-Man 2099 on the right and the Mezco 1989 movie Batman on the left. And of course, they all do scale really nicely together, all being a part of the same line, and they all do look really great. Although I think the Spider-Man 2099 is definitely still my favorite. It was the first one I got my hands on, and definitely still my favorite, I think. Definitely still has the most articulation. I think it looks the best, and I'm definitely super biased about it because it's Spider-Man. But yeah, I think all three of these guys look really good. And here he is next to the Marvel Legends Prowler figure from Into the Spider-Verse on the left, and the DC Multiverse McFarlane Toys Christian Bale Batman on the right, for your more common domestic figures. So here's how he stacks up against them. And for some other imports, we have on the right an SH Figuarts Goku, and on the left a Sentinel Peter B. Parker. And yeah, all three of these guys are completely unrelated. To be honest with you, I just grabbed the closest figures to me. So what's the verdict on this Mezco Moon Knight? I do really like it. I like the detail on it. I love the costume. It all looks really good. It really brings a cool take on Moon Knight and his costume, and I really like what they did with the design. He's not super articulated, you're not going to be able to get him into a ton of dynamic poses or anything, so that's a little bit of a bummer, but you're really paying for the look of the figure with this guy and that seamless look. You know, these Mezcos are almost like mini Hot Toys, and that's kind of how you gotta view them. That's why they're so expensive. So you're getting top-notch materials here, high quality work, good accessories, and that's all really nice. I do think we should get a little bit more accessories, but I do think they did a good job in that department. But overall, I'd say if you really love Moon Knight, then maybe this will be worth it for you if you could find it for a good price. And I think that if you like Moon Knight and you think you're gonna like the figure, you probably will. But other than that, let me know what your thoughts are down in the comments. I really hope you did enjoy the video. If you did, please hit that like button. It really does help this channel out. And if you haven't subscribed already, hit that subscribe button, because subscribing to this channel gives you lifetime virtual access to my collection. And I don't know about you, but that sounds like a pretty good deal to me. Alright guys, have a fantastic day, and I'll see you guys in the next one.